What if I told you that Minneapolis and St. Paul might be a terrible option if you're looking to move to Minnesota? In this video, I'm going to share with you some of the major negatives that are scaring people away from moving here and causing current residents to leave. I'll also share with you some great positive characteristics about each city so that way you make an informed decision when you purchase a home. Also, Minneapolis and St. Paul are considered the Twin Cities for a number of reasons, but make sure you understand what makes each city unique. I'm Michael Kootsikas, a real estate agent and resident of Minneapolis. And yes, Minneapolis is the better of the two cities, but I'll keep my personal opinion out of it. I'm going to tell you some truths about the negative aspects of each city. Unfortunately, Minneapolis and St. Paul have a very high crime rate. After the George Floyd murder and the unrest in the city, many politicians and people were calling to defund the police. And unfortunately, that led to many police officers leaving their precincts and basically cutting the police force in half. And since then, crime rates have shot up. As you can see, Minneapolis and St. Paul are not as safe as I'd hoped they'd be. I know in my neighborhood of Armitage, which is in the southwest portion of Minneapolis, it is very rare that we actually even see a police car driving through the neighborhood anymore. If the crime hasn't scared you away, let's talk about winters. They're tough. They're terrible. In fact, parking in Minneapolis and St. Paul and maneuvering the streets, it's very tough because Minneapolis and St. Paul have some narrow roads that aren't plowed very quickly after a snowfall. And sometimes in the winter, there's so much snow where you can only park on one side of the street. And in the city and closer to downtown, where the population is a little more condensed, those parking spots become very, very tough to get. When the snow finally thaws and parking restrictions are lifted and the commute is getting easier and easier, now you just have to watch out for some of the terrible roads. There are too many potholes in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and both cities stick to specific timelines when they resurface roads. And my neighborhood road is on a 30-year program. So in those final years before your road gets resurfaced, it's pretty bad. And then guess what? They're gonna tax you for resurfacing the road. One of the many joys of living in Minneapolis or St. Paul. Another negative, unfortunately, are the schools. There are pockets within each city with good schools, and there are some private school options that are great, but the public school, if I were to grade it, overall I'd probably give it a fail. And these stats and statistics help prove the point that we need to improve that educational system. The public transportation system is not that great either. It's great that they have the light rail connecting Minneapolis and St. Paul, but it's sort of slow and clunky. The Twin Cities are known to be a commuter city, so most people actually do own their own cars and get to and from work that way. If you're still looking to move here and want to move into a newer home or a new home, you'll probably be out of luck. Obviously, Minneapolis and St. Paul developed hundreds of years ago, and many homes that are standing today are 80 to probably about 120 years old. Some negative features about these old homes are that they often have detached garages, which is crazy to think about, especially in winter. And during those winter months, it's extremely tough to be backing in and out of your garage and getting through the alleys, which aren't cleared and plowed very well. Inside the home, because of its age, you'll often find a lot of squeaky floors, not the open floor plans that you're desiring. Oftentimes, basements may not even be finishable because the ceiling height is too low. And I hope you like your neighbors because these lots are not very big. Anywhere from about 0.13 acres to 0.2 acres is the norm. So you're really right on top of everybody. And furthering the discussion about homes, Minneapolis is a little bit more expensive than St. Paul. The average Minnesota home right now in 2023 at the start of the year is selling for $390,000. That comes in at about $238 per square foot. In St. Paul, the average sale price is $322,000 with the average price per square foot at $202. Now, both Minneapolis and St. Paul are fairly affordable cities. Minneapolis is a little less affordable just because home prices tend to be higher, which leads to higher rents. Unfortunately, if you own a home in either Minneapolis or St. Paul, you're going to be faced with pretty high property taxes as well as a high state income tax. Fortunately, the job market and economy is very strong in the Twin Cities area. There are a ton of Fortune 500 and 5,000 companies in the Twin Cities and in the nearby suburbs. There is a wide range of opportunities and employers that pay very nice wages. Traffic isn't terrible compared to the national average. It's actually not too bad. And most commuters have anywhere from 20 to 30 minute commute time. Going back downtown, Minneapolis and St. Paul, you'll find something very unique, and those are the skyways. In each city, you can literally walk for miles without ever having to step foot outside. Now, this comes in handy during those harsh winter days. The Twin Cities share love for our sports team, so grab your Homer hanky and celebrate like you did back in 1991 for our last men's world championship with the Minnesota Twins. And while you're celebrating, how about you show me some love too and quickly hit that subscribe button. Now in Minneapolis, you'll find the Minnesota Twins, Minnesota Vikings, Timberwolves, and Lynx. Also on the collegiate level are the Minnesota Golden Gophers. In St. Paul, you'll find the Minnesota Wild, Minnesota United, and St. Paul Saints, along with the only other Division I college, St. Thomas, which was just added recently. Both Minneapolis and St. Paul have fantastic arts, theater, and science buildings and experiences. In Minneapolis, you'll find the Guthrie Theater, Walker Arts Center, and First Avenue, just to name a few. In St. Paul, you'll find the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, which is the only full-time orchestra in the United States. And you'll also find other amazing theaters like the Ordway. Now let's talk about some differences between the cities. An important note historically, during the Prohibition era, the gangster activity was highly connected to St. Paul, and those that are still connected say that there is still a lingering trace of that same organization. And the nightlife is even different. Minneapolis is, I would say, more lively, upbeat, more of that nightclub type feel and a party, where St. Paul is more laid back and you just have that neighborhood bar feel. If you're out and about, you'll notice major differences between the downtowns. Minneapolis is filled with skyscrapers and a lot more modern architecture. St. Paul has smaller buildings, a lot of lofts, and very beautiful old architecture. Both Minneapolis and St. Paul have beautiful parks, but Minneapolis separates itself because it has so many more lakes than St. Paul. And St. Paul has plenty of beautiful views and bluffs and trails along that Mississippi River. As you're out and about in each city, you know some differences in people. Both cities, I would think, are decently diverse. In Minneapolis, you'll find a higher percentage of black people than you do in St. Paul. Minneapolis has a very strong Somalian population, where St. Paul has a very strong Hmong population. Even though these cities might be diverse, unfortunately, the inequalities in the housing market rank basically at the bottom. I've done a very in-depth video on that exact topic because we must know the history and we must make Minneapolis and St. Paul a better city for everybody. If I've scared you away from moving to Minneapolis or St. Paul, I have some good news for you. The surrounding suburbs are fantastic. But if you'd like to find out more about the Twin Cities, Minneapolis specifically, click on this next video over here so you can find the top 10 reasons why you will actually love this city. And don't forget, make sure to subscribe. We'll see ya.